Okay. All right, I'm from Retro. I'm Joe Betts-LaCroix, and here's an update, since we love to come back to this place and share with you all. So our mission for the company, we're a company, is to add 10 years to healthy human lifespan. And we can give updates in the forms of numbers, because the numbers are beautiful. And we've been running 4 programs now. We did some program refinement since the last time we were here, operating for about 3.75 years. Presently, a few more than 72, constantly moving. We have a big animal research facility, about 10,000 animal capacity, and so far we're funded by a seed investment of $180 million, and our newly expanded campus is now around 6,000 square meters. So what are we up to? We are doing both replacement, which is sort of one of the ways that we see of doing rejuvenation for people, and rejuvenation. So by replacement, we mean taking out old cells and putting young cells in their place. And by rejuvenate, not entirely giving up on these old cells in the body, but rather trying to undamage them, if you will. So for us, this divides into 2 programs in replacement. We're replacing microglia, which are, as you just heard, one of the 4 main cell types of the brain, and HSCs, which is hematopoietic stem cells. So HSC is a lot easier to say. They are the stem cells in our bone marrow that generate our blood. And on the rejuvenate side, we have an autophagy program, which is small molecule. Will probably be first in class as an autophagy modulator, and a tissue reprogramming research group. And all of these are now supported by a new group that is in applied AI. I won't have time to talk about all these programs because it's a reasonably short talk, 17 minutes I heard. I'll be talking about the HSC program and the applied AI program. So the HSCs, the primary long-term goal is to be able to reset an aged immune system, for instance, a 90-year-old immune system with young immune cells. So as a quick background, though most of you know this, HSCs live in the bone marrow, and they give rise by multiplying and differentiating over our entire lifespan to all of the blood in our bodies. Every single different blood cell type that you see listed there, including all of our immune cells. It's about 80% of all the cells of human origin in our bodies, so it's kind of crazy. And unfortunately, when people get old, they stop working as well. And regardless of your position on these vaccines, it's not a matter of debate that this increases as we age, the rate of fatalities from various infectious diseases, including, for instance, COVID-19. There are other reasons than just fighting off age-related diseases that you might want to have young HSCs. And in experiments where young HSCs or old HSCs are transplanted into an old mouse, lifespan is significantly increased, as you can see by the blue curve moved over to the right, as well as other phenotypes of these animals. So that's some additional motivation from the literature. So what we're working on for that is to be able to take cells from the human body, reprogram them to iPSC, where they are theoretically rejuvenated, redifferentiate into HSCs, where they theoretically remain young, and then put them back into the body so that they can displace the existing old HSCs. There's a lot more complexity to it than that, but that's the basic schematic. And we chose replacement because our experiments in doing partial reprogramming, which is obviously another aging intervention on HSCs, were not as impressive as we hoped. And we wanted the full rejuvenation that comes with full reprogramming. And that requires having to come up with a differentiation protocol, which is non-trivial, was actually just recently discovered worldwide anywhere in the literature a few months ago, and which we licensed. exclusively for our company. So the way we test this out, is this really working, is we develop these human HSCs, we put them into immunocompromised mice, NBSGW, gold standard mice for this purpose, and then let them engraft for 5 months, which makes a long DBTL cycle for us. Then harvest the marrow from these, do flow cytometry, and look at what kind of cells are then in these bone marrow. And through the iterations of getting this right, we arrive at a state where all of the cells that are needed to support a person are indeed being produced, even over the long term, by being able to select in flow cytometry for human cells. And then back to this question, like, are they actually young? Are they rejuvenated? We can take cells of any particular wide range of ages, including over 60, like yours truly, and run them through this process. And we can verify here using an epigenetic clock that indeed iPSCs, as is well known in the literature, are essentially zero age. And there are a bunch of other phenotypes that you can check on them, but we're just using epigenetic age as a proxy here because it's semi-convenient. So the next question, does redifferentiating them into HSCs kind of olden them again or not? And we see here that they're still pretty much effectively young, like maybe a few months within the accuracy also of these clocks. Then, well, what about once they engraft? Do then they return to being old HSCs and after 5 months in the bone marrow? No, they're maybe 1.4 years on average. So if you're a 90-year-old wanting brand new blood, this seems like a fine from so far. We haven't done it to people yet that I know of. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, so that, that program's underway. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is a project that we had in making an AI model for protein engineering generally, which we then tried out on transcription factors because we're slightly obsessed with reprogramming. How do you modify or make new proteins? It has been quite hard for people generally. Easier to find some protein in nature and use it as a therapy than to actually start re-engineering your own protein so far. But that's obviously kind of limited. So the ways you can do it are you can be sort of godlike in your understanding of exactly how the protein works and go in there and intentionally change this amino acid to that one and like hopefully miraculously have your new functioning protein. Historically, that's been really hard. And for sure, people do it, but it's just you have to have an extremely good idea of exactly what you're doing. You can do directed evolution or other permutation and selection kind of methods. Those are limited by the combinatorics involved. So even if you're just changing 3 amino acids, that's already 8,000 different permutations. Now imagine you're trying to change larger stretches of the amino acid sequence. It becomes a very giant sort of random search space to try to walk through. Or chimerization is another where you can like take properties of 2 different proteins and cut them up and glue them together and hope you don't mess up their function, and maybe you can get the best of both if you have like pretty good ideas about where the function or the benefits are coming from in these different programs. But what we wanted to do is see, could we create an AI model that is bio-native that could speak protein and just ask it to make a protein that's more like this for human that might actually work. So we partnered with OpenAI and this is recently, a few days ago, out on the OpenAI blog, which you can easily find there, to build a new model and see if, the mutual project was, can we build an AI model that can discover things that were never, people couldn't do, but the model could easily do. And that would be like a sign that we're getting close to like general large models being able to actually do science in a new way, which would If it's true, it would be great because it means that we can start accelerating all of our work in biology. So we built this new model that's based on huge quantities of data that we curated and brought into the collaboration. They ended up calling it GP24B micro, and it was based on a stripped-down version of GPT-4, and it's B for bio, obviously. And we fed in vast quantities of data on like protein structures across different families of proteins, protein-protein interaction databases, and also sort of evolutionary scale databases. And the test that we decided to put it to is on a particular set of proteins that are rather dear to our hearts, which are 4 different, at least a couple different transcription factors that are so-called Yamanaka factors, which are as probably most of you know, the fundamental proteins that were discovered by a Nobel Prize in 2006, showing that you can take any adult cell and reprogram it to an iPSC. So that iPSC magic, there's a natural route, but since we have, as you saw from the prior section that I was describing, we have iPSC generation in our therapeutics, but it's kind of inefficient and slow. So could we make it better? And so this is the readout we used, trying to reprogram fibroblasts into iPSCs. And so we used the model to generate variants of this. We then had them printed out, put into viruses, into a reprogramming experiment, and then doing the readout using cell sorting, specifically looking at variants that we had produced of SOX2, which is the S and OSKM, and KLF4, which is the K. And one mildly interesting outcome is that between like 1/3 and 1/2 approximately of all the variants it produced actually worked well, which is kind of shocking to us that it would be that juicy compared to the typical output. Even more shocking, like the most shocking to me, I think, was how much of the proteins were rewritten by the model. Here you can see that the horizontal scale is how much of the sequence has changed. And there's up to 80% sequence difference in a lot of the variants that worked beautifully, which means that there are hundreds of amino acids that are being changed in these proteins in ways that we have no idea why. We're still trying to figure that out. That's the crazy thing to us. So the results were, wow, some of them are massively better at reprogramming by the initial assays that we set up for reprogramming efficiency, especially the combination of both of the different transcription factors that we modified. And so how does this work at the scale where it's like part of our concern was that, okay, maybe these are these weird kind of Frankenstein transcription factors that just, maybe they're overfitting for the early markers of pluripotency just by, say, hacking the generation of that particular cell surface marker or something, or they're just like very much messing up these cells, but like gaming the project of trying to make them look like iPSC. So we spent a bunch of time since then and just grinding through, like, really? And trying it at different cell types and trying it from different donors, and then doing a bunch of diligent genome and functional measurements on the iPSCs that were generated. And yeah, they make great iPSCs. The genomes are stable, they're karyotypically normal, they can produce all 3 germ layers, et cetera, some other metrics that we ran as well. It seems like totally functional bona fide reprogramming, which is, okay, that's good. Since we're an aging biology company with an aging mission, then obviously we're wondering, because these Yamanaka factors are also what were used in over the last 9 years or so, partial reprogramming experiments, which seems like a pretty powerful modality if we can make it safe, that creates a younger state in cells. could some of the transcription factors that we created here make some cells younger in a partial reprogramming context? So the readout we decided to use is one of the things that is improved by partial reprogramming. This was shown in Alex Ocampo's 2016 paper. The markers of DNA damage, these seem to resolve with reprogramming somehow. There perhaps is an actual like DNA repair phase that cells go through when they're reprogrammed. I guess it would make sense if you're about to make a whole new person out of this one cell. You probably want to get it in as cherry shape as you can. So it's gamma H2AX foci develop at places of DNA damage at double standard breaks, and it's a known thing that increases with age there on the left, and it's also from Ocampo's work and others, it's known to also reduce in blue there, and like PR is for partial reprogramming. So we set up an assay where we create some DNA damage in fibroblasts and then try out different versions of our reprogramming factors in a partial reprogramming context and see, like, is it doing that DNA damage reduction that normal OSKM has already been proven to do. And what we see here is that compared to the control in red, and yep, there's the normal OSKM, it for sure is reducing the gamma H2X foci. Specifically, one of our retrosox variants is much stronger at that, which is not to say that you do it to all your cells and like, yay, you'll be younger, but we proceed one assay at a time through our work. So that's just a quick taste, I guess, of a couple of these. Unfortunately, short talk, I think 16 or 17 minutes. So I don't have time to go through all of our programs, but the team has been working super hard on all of them. Our autophagy program, in particular, will be ready for the clinic later this year. We'll be starting our phase 1, the microglia program after that, and then followed by human trials for the HSC program. And we've also been growing a bunch, and so we've moved into, or expanded into, a second lab. So I guess that means we have a campus now. We're doing a fundraise. We want to, now that these specifically 3 programs are going to the clinic, we want to create 16 new programs now, because adding 10 years to healthy lifespan for human is not an easy task. It's going to take a lot of parallel therapeutics and different modalities, and a lot of shots on goal, because not all of them are going to work either. So here's the team. Super grateful to every single person on here who are critical. It takes a village to do this, and I'm incredibly happy to be working with such incredibly talented people. And that's a snapshot of what we've been up to at Retro right now.